Oh, Friday. When you go to Friday. Okay, so what we learned at the end of yesterday, meaning at the end of Tzadik Aleph on the base, was that the Malachim can only say Shem Hashem after three words: Kadosh, 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 and then Hashem Tzedakos. While we could say Shem Hashem after only two words, Shema Yisrael, and then Hashem. So the Gemara asked, okay, that explains the pasuk of Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzedakos. But what about Baruch, Avoid, Hashem, there is only a third word. So to Gemara, Baruch, Vayfanim Huda. Baruch is not said by the Malachim, it's said by the Ifanim. And Tosha says by the Chayis HaKodesh as well. Or you could say, even the Siyai Rishusa, once they already said Kaddish 3 times, and now they have Rishus to say Shem Hashem, Yisyayiv now, they're not restricted. It's only when they start saying Shem Hashem, they have to introduce it with 3 words. Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish.
In the Torah, the word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei was mentioned very casually by the Torah characters, by Eliezer, by Lavan, it was a name that the way they identified the Rebbeinu Shalom was using Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and I'm paying special attention to this. I see a chabur in there somewhere, but I find it unusual, and it never came to my attention before. But Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in dialogue was used pretty casually by the biblical characters, shall I say.
So is it possible that our Gemara is only referring to in Shira?
Possibly, but what's the difference?
But that would need an explanation as to why in Shira is Hashem's name more Kadosh than it would be without in Shira. It has its own intrinsic condition.
That's a possibility. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. It's a good point. Okay. Zog to Gemara. We're going to dash now a pasuk in Hosea that references this encounter that Yaakov had with the Shai Shalisim. And the pasuk says, "Vayosar el malach, vayuchal, bacha vayischanu." It's not clear from the pasuk who mastered over whom. Vayosar el malach could be that Yaakov mastered over the malach. Or it could be Vayosar el malach, he was mastered over to the malach. In other words, the malach mastered over him. It says Vayosar el malach vayuchal, and he succeeded. Bacha vayischanu, and he cried and begged him. From the pasuk in Hosea, Eina yodea mi nasa sar lemi. Who was the one who triumphed? But Kishu Omer, in the parsha in Bereshis, when it discusses the story, it says Kisarisa im Elakim. It says in the pasuk, Kisarisa im Elakim v'manoshim vatucho. So clearly, it's saying that Yaakov was the one who triumphed over Sar Shalisim. Omer Yaakov nasa sar lemalach. The pasuk goes on, Bacha vayischanu. Again, en yedea mi bacha lemi. Kishu Omer back in Bereshis, in Sefer Bereshis, vayischanu loy. En yedea mi bacha lemi. Kishu Omer vayomer shalcheni. Sorry, it says in Bereshis, vayomer shalcheni. The Malach asked Yaakov to release him. Vayomer Malach bacha liYaakov. The pasuk in Bereshis says, "Kisarisa imer lakim v'manoshim." Omer Rabbo remez ramas loy. The Sar Shalisim was signaling to Yaakov, "Shasidim shnei sarim lotzos mimenu." There will be 2 masters that will come out of you, referring to the Rosh Goylesh Bavel and the Nasi Eretz Yisrael. The Rosh Goylesh, the Nasi Eretz Yisrael, was referred to as Elikim because referring to a Bezin, the pasuk says Ad Hohelahim Yavoid Dvar. That's in Mishpatim. And we know that the best is referred to as Elohim, and the best in Sanhedrin is only found in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael. But the Imanoshim is referring to Rosh Hagoyla. In Golos, they was also a leader, but he didn't have the same status as the Rosh as the Nasi Shebababa, which means in the midst of saying that there'll be a Rosh Hagosh in Babel, that's telling you that you're going to be in Babel. You can't Ramas like Golos. So the Sarah Shalisa was also being Maramis to Yaakov that Klal Yisrael will eventually go to Golos. Now we're going to darshman extensively the dream that the Sahar Mashpin had. Why are we darshaning the dream? We're going to have so many different shatim in the dream. The Maral says that the dream that Yosef had was literally the gateway to the building of Klal Yisrael, because the dream is ultimately what led to Yosef being freed from jail, which ultimately led to Klal Yisrael coming off of Mitzrayim, where we were put into the crucible of the Rebbeinu Shalom to prepare us and forge us into a nation. So these Shotim in the Gemara are going to elaborate on that and see all that in the dream that was related to Yosef. With a Geffen Shloisha Sarita. On this vine, there were three, I guess, three strains of vine. Amar Abchi Bar Abba Amar Ab, Elu Gimel Sarei Geim, Hayotzim Yisrael B'chol Dor V'dor. These are the three big askonim that come out of Klal Yisrael every year. Rashi says, Sarei Geim, Ashirim, they're wealthy, and politically involved. There's always three prominent such people in Klal Yisrael in every generation. Pamim sheshnayim kan ve'echad be'eretz Yisrael. Pamim sheshnayim be'eretz Yisrael ve'echad kan. Sometimes two of them are in Israel, one in the Lords, and sometimes it's the opposite. Yehivu Rabbanon inayu. The Rabbanon look towards Ravna Ukva, Ravna Nechemia, and they barte the Rav. They looked at Ravna Ukva and Ravna Nechemia, Ukva and Nechemia, who were the grandchildren of Rav, as the people of this generation. Rav Amar Elu Shloisha Sarei Goyim Shemalandim Schus Al Yisrael B'chol Dor V'dor. These are referring to Gimel, three kings, three Goyish kings that advocate on behalf of Klal Yisrael in each generation. I wonder who they are in this generation. I would consider to say one could be President Trump. I don't know. So Carney definitely doesn't make that list. Maybe one is the Prime Minister of Argentina. I'm not sure who the three Goyish prime ministers that have Israel's back are in this generation. Tanya, Geffen Zeha Oila. Geffen is referring to the world. Shlosha Sarigim, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. The three main branches are referring to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The Hikapairachas also Nitza, describing the maturity of the vine, that it was starting to blossom. Elu ha'imois, these are the imois. They're not as strong as the avois. They're compared to blossoming fruit versus the branches, the hard branches that hold up the vine. Tavshilu eshkelei se'anavim, its clusters are ripened with grapes. Elu hashvatim, these are referring to the shvatim. Amr lo Rabbi Shua v'chimayin lo la'odem ma shahaya, v'alo ein mayin lo la'odem ela ma sha'asadiyaks. Are you going to tell me that in the dreams it's meramis, what was already occurring in Klal Yisrael? At that point, the shvatim were already there. The emotions were already there. Usually a dream is coming to predict the future. Ella, Geffen Zetayra. Geffen is referring to the Torah, which we didn't yet get on Har Sinai. Shloisha Sarigim Elu Moshe Va'aron Miriam. V'hike Perachas also Nitza Elu Sanhedrin. That's referring to Sanhedrin. If Shilu Eshkloisa Novim Elu Hatzadikim Shebachal Darvin. Rabbi Gamliel, with all your pshatim, Adayin Tzrichen Anu L'Moidoi. We still need the pshat of Rabbi Lezer Hamoidoi. The Mukam Lekule Bechad Mok. He focuses the meaning of the dream in one place. You're like all over the place. Torah, Yisrael, Moshe, Aaron. He focuses on one place, as we see in just a minute. Rabbi Lezer Hamoidoi Omer Gefen Zeh Yerushalayim Shloisha Sarigin Zeh Mikdash Melech V'Koyin V'Koy Gadol V'Ka Parachas also Nitza Elu Pirchei Kahuna. We're all focused around the base of Mikdash. Rav Shilosh Kolisa Novim Elu Desach. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Mukam Lo B'Mataros. He says that the pasuk is referencing all of the gifts that Klal Yisrael were zoicha to. The Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi Gefen Zu Torah Shloisha Sarigim Zu Be'er Abur Onan Uman. Those three gifts that we got. Vika Parachas also. Vika Parachas Elu Habikurim. Vika Parachas also Nitza Elu Habikurim. It's referring to the Bikurim, the beautiful fruit that we're zoicha to. If Shilu Eshklasha Novim Elu Nesachim, those are the Nesachim that are brought from the wine of the grapes that are gifted to us. Rabbi Yirmi Ba'abu Amar Gefen Elu Yisrael. It's referred to Klal Yisrael. B'cheinu Omer Gefen Mitzrayim Tasiya. Gefen will pick up and leave Mitzrayim. Shloisha Sarigim Elu Shloisha Regolim Yisrael Elu Ben B'chol Shana B'Shana. They're referring to the Regolim. V'chika also. V'chika Parachas also needs the Bach takes out. V'chika Parachas means Higia Zmanon Shal Yisrael Lifrois V'Lerbois. Parachas means it's time for us to grow. It's time for Klal Yisrael to multiply. Also, Nitza, we know the letter Hey and the letter Ches are sometimes interchangeable. So, Modash Nitza as Netzach, Yizmanan Shal Yisrael, Lifrois V'Lerbois, Chenoimer, Ubnei Yisrael Paru, Yishutu, also Nitza, Yizmanan Shal Yisrael Ligael. It's time for us to have the Geula Netzach, which should happen soon for us from Herav Yameinu. V'cheinu Omer, Vayez Nitzcham Al Begodai. This is a fascinating pasuk. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is describing the La'asad Lovoi, how Hashem is fighting our battles and beating up our enemies, and Hashem is saying that my begodim got dirty with blood, the blood of the goyim that I slaughtered to protect the Eden. It says in the pasuk, Pura darachti levadi, I squashed the enemies. Ume amim ein ishiti, I fought it by myself. The edrichem ba'api, I'll crush them. I'll trample on them in my anger. Va'armesein b'chamasi, I'll crush them with my anger. V'yez nitzcham al begodi, and their blood and their dirt will be on my begodim. V'chol mavushay egalti, I'll get all my clothing dirty k'mayachol in the process of crushing the goyim, the enemies of Klal Yisrael. Zok to Gemara. V'chol I'm sorry. V'yez nitzcham al begodai. V'chol mavushay egalti. If Shilu Eshkenaseh al Anoven, what is that referring to? That means Mana shall Mitzrayim lishtois koshatayim. Now it's the Mitzrayim's turn to drink the bitter cup of the cup of bitterness. They're going down. Hani da Amar Rava, that's what Rava said. Shloisha kosos hamurish b'Mitzrayim lama. What are the three kosos mentioned by Mitzrayim? It's up to Gemara. Echad sheshasa b'imay Moshe. So let's just look in Rashi for a second to see what those three words koisais are referring to. Gimel koisais, besipur achaloim, when the Saramashnu was saying over the dream, he mentioned the word kois 3 times. What is this referring to? Echot sheshasa b'mei Moshe, when we left Mitzrayim. Bechot sheshasa b'mei Pari Nechei. Nebuchadnezzar beat up Mitzrayim pretty bad in the days of Pari Nechei. Echot shasida lishtois im kol ha'ovdik b'chav. And the one that the Mitzrayim are going to drink together with all the other goyim that tormented us throughout the Golus when Mashiach comes. Amalei Rab Abba Rab Yirmi Rab Abba told his father, Ki darish lu Rav l'hani kroi ba'agadata, when Rav would darshan this psukim, kavasech darish lu. He liked your pshat the best because he would darshan like your pshat that it's referring to Klal Yisrael, Geffen Mitzrayim, Shlosha Sarigim is referring to Shlosha Regolim. He darshaned it Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba's way. Amar Rab Shimon ben Lakish, Umazu, this nation kegefen nimshala. We're compared to a wine vine. Zumurai Shaba are the main stalks. Elu Balebatim. Those are referring to the Balebatim who support Torah, who are responsible, who are the foundation around which the Torah was built. Eshkoilei Shaba, the clusters. Elu Talmidei Chachamim. The fruit, the beautiful fruit, are the Talmidei Chachamim. Alin Shaba, the leaves, which also form a little sheath of protection around the fruit. Elu Amei Haaretz. Kenoik Shaba. Kenoik are the small little stems. You see them; they usually spiral around. Those are Rekadim Shebi Yisrael, even those empty members of Klal Yisrael. Behind the Sholchim Itam, and that's what they said from Eretz Yisrael. Liboy Rachamim Iskalaya Alalai. The Eshkolim, the Talmidei Chachamim, should daven for the leaves, because the leaves protect them. The pasuk says, the Torah says, "Va'echra li b'chamisha asar kosov." Let's have a look at these psukim. Very, very nice psukim. Says v'echra li chamisha asar kesef v'chaymer sa'arim v'lesach sa'arim. That's what I'm going to dig for me, is what the Rebbeinu Shalom said. Rashi says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Kanisi li Yisrael, I bought Klal Yisrael when? Tesvav. So let's look at the Gemara inside. The Gemara inside says, V'echra li b'chamisha asar kesef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan b'shem Rabbi Shimon ben Yetzadok, Ein kira el loshem mechira, means I purchased Klal Yisrael. Shendemar, like Yaakov said, B'kivri asher karisi li, I think it's Yaakov Avinu. The Chamisha also is at Tesvav B'Nisan, which is the first day of Pesach, Sheboi Nigalu Yisrael Mitzrayim. Kesef, Elu Tzadikim. V'cheinu Omer, Tzuror HaKesef Lokach B'Yodai, which is referring to Klal Yisrael, to the Tzadikim of Klal Yisrael. And then the pasuk says, Chaymer Sa'arim V'Lesach Sa'arim. Chaymer Sa'arim is 30 sa, Alesach is 15 sa. In total, 30 plus 15 is 45. Elu Memei Tzadikim Sha'olim Eskayim Behem. These are the 45 tzaddikim that the world depends on. So we know there's 36 tzaddikim. Here's a set of 45 tzaddikim. I don't know about these 45 that are split up into 2 parts, 30 and 15. Shloshim kan v'tesvav beretz Yisrael, or v'shloshim beretz Yisrael v'tesvav kan. However, kishu aimer, when the pasuk says later, v'ekra shloshim hakesef v'ashlech leisai beis Hashem el hayoytzer, when Hashem says, I'm going to throw 30 into the Beis HaMikdash, hava aimer shloshim beretz Yisrael, 30 must be in Eretz Yisrael, v'tesvav kan, and we have 15 tzaddikim that are spread around chutz la'aretz. Amrabai, Virubayu, most of them can be found. If you want to find the 15 tzaddikim in Chus Lords, or the 30 tzaddikim in Yisrael that are holding up the world, you could find them in Shtakri v'veknishne the Tusi Afasa, which Rashi says Apusa, it's almost like a lean-to. They're not sitting high up in glorious positions by the Mizrah. They're very, very discreet. They're very, very humble. Looking at them, you would never know that it's their power that's holding up the world because they're very, very humble people. You wouldn't guess who they are. Behind the chsiv, and that's what the pasuk says. Aleim, im toiv beinechem. Hashem tells the goyim, if it's good in your eyes, havu schori, pay up. If you loy, then chidlu, stop. Vayishkalu eschari, and give me my pay. Shloishim kesef, 30 kesef. Who are these 30 kesef that Hashem is demanding of the goyim? If you doimer, elu shloishim sadike umas ha'olam, she'umas ha'olam miskayim aleim. These are the 30 tzaddikim that live amongst the goyim that they hold up the umas ha'olam. Ulamar elu shloishim mitzvahs shekibdu aleim b'nei noyach ve'in mekayim elu shloishim. It's actually referring to 30 mitzvahs that the B'nai Noach used to keep, or they accepted upon themselves, but they never did them. And Rashi says, Lo disparsha, I don't know what they are. The article brings out from different Rishonim a list of the 30 mitzvahs, but there's different shittas in what they are. There are some who learned that the Sheva mitzvahs B'nai Noach are not really 7 tzivuyim, there are 7 categories. For instance, din, they have to have Vate dinim. That's a category, but it involves many details of what civil law should be. So it could be the 7 really could spread out into 30. But ve'ein mekayim el shloisha, which we're shortly going to see today, they don't even do that. They don't even keep 3. But what 3 were kept by the goyim, at least in the time of the Gemara, turning on the Amid Beis. Even though they do indulge in Mishkav Zachar, but they don't formalize those marriages. Today, I don't think we could say that anymore. The Acha She'ein Sheiklin Basar HaBeis B'Makulin, and Rashi is 2 pshat. Yes, they eat Basar Nevela, roadkill, but they don't commercialize it. Sell it by the pound, or could be it's even referring to human remains. And the third thing they still have is they still have a certain respect for the Bible. Getting back to halacha, the Isser Giranosha does not apply to a bird. In fact, the more the Islay. Why does the Mishnah say the Isser Giranosha is not noig ba'oiv? Because they don't have a round kaf, but they do have a kaf. Zakhamar true Islay, but for loy ogil, it's not round, it's straight. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, Islay lo'oif ogil. What if a bird was formed wrong, had a birth defect, and it did have a round? It did have a round piece of meat over the thigh bone, or the behemoth. What if an animal didn't form right and its kaf was not round? What would halacha be? When you look at each individual animal, and if it has the kaf, it'll be an isser, a beber and a kai, like basar minayas to do. Or no, you go basar the species. And birds always don't have it in Giranasha, and beavers always do have it in Zakamar take. Zakamar Viter. The Noig Bishalil, the mitzvah or the isser of Giranasha applies also by a ben pekua. Amar Shmuel, the chelboy muter ledivri akol. Even though there's a din Giranasha, but the chelev of a shalil is for sure muter. Or is that what Shmuel meant? Maybe he was talking about some other chelev. Chelboy namai. What type of chelev was Shmuel referencing when he said it's a muter ledivri akol? Sai Rav Yudah, Sai the Chacham. Elam of the shlil, if it's the chelev of a shlil, we know that can't be true. Well, miflik fligibei, There's a machlokes tanoim about it. Tanya noig b'shalil v'chel b'yosor divrei Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda Omer ein noig b'shalil v'chel b'muter. So Shmuel couldn't possibly have said that v'chel b'muter l'divrei hakoil, because that's not true. If we're talking about the standard chelev of a shlil, Yomer b'lozor b'boishia, he added that machlokes b'ben tishachai. The whole machlokes is if they shechted a mother and they found the ben tishachai, which is a ben pekua, which you don't have to shecht. But v'halach Reb Meir l'shitasoi, who holds that you do have to shecht it. That's why Reb Meir holds that it's chelev gitter osur, because he looks at it like a standalone animal. It was not nitar b'shchitas imoy. Reb Yehuda l'shitasoi, that it is nitar b'shchitas imoy. Kol ba'behem etechel. Ve'elo, when Shmuel said that everybody agrees that it's a mutter, he must be talking about chel boy the gid, the chelev that wraps around the gid. Frek the Gemara, how could you say in Shmuel that everybody agrees that it's a mutter? Hamiflik pligiba. We have a brisa that illustrates a machlokes by the chelev of the gid as well. The Tanya gid anosha mechatet acharov v'chomokim shehu v'choitech shmanai meikarim. The gid anosha, you got to dig after every little branch of it, and any fat that's together with the gid must be cut out. That's a strong indication that the shemen of the gid is osir. The Reb Meir. But Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, you just cut the gid out up until the sticks out of the meat, and you don't have to dig after the fat. Zok to Gemara, la'olam chel boy the gid. We're still talking about chel boy the gid. You find a machlokes, umoide Shmuel the Reb Meir midrabanon osir. Shmuel, who says even in Reb Meir that the shemen shall get his osir, it's only midrabanon osir. So when Shmuel said earlier that l'divrei hakoil the chelev is muter, that's midaraisa. Midrabanon Reb Meir is mach, but avada midaraisa chul almas moida that the chelev of the gid is muter. The Tanya, like we have in a brisa, it says v'shamnoi muter v'Yisrael kedoshim nahagu ba Yisrael. So Pashas, that's Reb Meir talking. My love Reb Meir, and that supports what we said, Shmuel, that although midaraisa the chelev is muter, midrabanon we don't need the chelev. My love Reb Meir, he the amar muter min haTorah va'osir midrabanon, and that fits perfectly in with our Shmuel. So Gemara, no, mimai, you don't have a right from there. Dilma Rabbi Yehudi, maybe he's saying even Rabbi Yehuda, who is quoted the bride as muter, he only means it's muter midaraisa, but it's still also midarabanon, and Reb Meir is even midaraisa. Reb Meir midaraisa namiyos. Zokim aloy sol kadaita. It's not logical to explain the bride stuff. The Tanya kida nosha mechatet acharav b'chol mokim shehu v'sham noy muter. Now we know it was Reb Meir Shita who holds mechatet acharav b'chol mokim shehu. So this brisa must be Reb Meir, and yet it says v'sham noy muter. Man chamis lei the islay chatita Reb Meir. The ka'amar sham noy muter. So you clearly see that Reb Meir held sham noy muter, meaning midaraisa, and that there's an iser. That's because Yisrael kedoshim nagawa iser. It's only midarabon. Amar b'yitzuk bar Shmuel bar Marsna Amarav. Lo yosra Torah ela k'noik noish shabbat. There's a Veishet video on this. We know the gid anosh is hard. It's not really edible. There's no taste to it. When the Torah prohibited gid anosha, it probably was referring to something that would be edible. So as the nerves branch out from the gid anosha into the muscle, those nerves are softer. Those are edible. So Zokt Rav, you know what's also of the gid anosha, not the gid itself. You can't eat it. It's Torah is referring to only the knoik noise, only the little branches that are edible which come out of it. Well, is it punk verkehrt? It's the gid anosha itself. The Torah doesn't say knoik noise. The Torah says gid anosha. Eye has no taste. Big deal. Eitzu, but Torah chayv. The Torah talks that it's not edible, but if you eat it, you get a lot anyway. Rabbi, kavosei du ulu mistav. Ulu's pshat is more mistavra that even though the gid is not edible, the Torah is still asking you to eat it. Rabbi Sheshes Rabasi, chuten shebechelev surin. there are certain veins that went through the chaylev. Rashi explains because the 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 wall of the animal, things called the flank of the animal, those the loins, it's called the loins of the animal. Archwell is a good cross-sectional picture of the loins of the animal. The veins that go through, or the sinews that go through that chaylev, are also going to be osir. But the ein chayov in alein, but you're not chayav of them, meaning midaraisa, you're not mechuyev, but it's also midarabad. Alma chaylev omer rachmana v'loy chutin. So you see clearly the issue daraisa is only chaylev, but not anything going through them. Hakanami gid omer rachmana, so too by the gidanosha, referring to the main gid, v'loy k'nei. Now we're on a tangent because we're discussing chaylev. Gufa. Amar Absheshes, Amar Abasi, Chutin Shebechelev Asur. But ve'ein chayav nalein. But Shebecholya, the chutin that are found inside of a kidney, Asurin ve'ein chayav nalein. They have the same halacha. Asur midrabanan, but there's no chayav. Loivin kolya, we know the center of the kidney is all fat, and it's encompassed by a shell of the organ. Now, the white fat that's inside the entire kidney, Rabbi V'Rabchia, there's a machlokes between Rabbi and Rabchia, this is chaylev that's also. Chad osar v'chad shari. Rabba memartetle. Rabba would scrape it all out of the kidney. He wouldn't eat it. He would consider it to be chaylev. Rabbi Yochanan memartetle. He would just take off the surface whatever is visible at the outside of the kidney at the point where the kidney drops at its cavity area, where it's opening, that's where he took it all out. But all the way inside, he didn't take that out. Rab Asi goimle. Rab Asi goimle hachofui. Aval b'chulya ochal. Whatever was sticking out, he would. So I'm wrong. Rabbi Yochanan and Martetli, he would. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi both took it all out from inside the kidney. Rabbi Asi took out the fat that was at the surface, at the opening where the artery enters the kidney, but he didn't dig in and take all the fat out from the entire interior of the kidney. Amar Abaye, Kabosei Rabbi Asi Mistavra, that the fat inside is not osir. The Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, turning on to the Haftzad, the Gimel, Amar Aleph. Chaylev Shabosar Chayfa Isai, Chaylev that's covered over with Bosar. This is already not referring to the chaylev inside the kidney. This is speaking about the chaylev in the loins. So the part of the chaylev that's covered over by the meat, because the article is a very good cross-sectional picture showing that the chaylev is in between layers of muscle. So chaylev that you can't see, that's covered over by the meat, mutter, that chaylev is mutter. The chaylev that's also is the chaylev that's visible and not covered over with meat. Alma, what do you see from here? Sha'alak Solim, when the Torah said the chaylev on the loins are also Sha'alak Solim, Amar Rachmana, V'loisha B'seichatzah. Not the chaylev that's in between two layers of muscle. That's not the osir. What's osir is the chaylev that's on the Solim, meaning it's on and you could see it without peeling away the meat. Hachanami, so too, when the Torah asher the chaylev inside the kidney, sha'ala kloyis amrachmana, the fat that's visible on the exterior of the kidneys, v'loisha b'soicha kloyis, and not chaylev that's on the interior of the kidneys. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we were soicha. Finish Daf Tzadik Beis. Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we will learn Daf Tzadik Gimel.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach. Everyone should have a wonderful